Now we'll try it one more time. See if this is going to work or not. See if our voices are going to be loud. And this is what, January the 16th, right? 1979. And I'll finish reading part of Marietta Johnson's history that Hazele Payne has written. Back in the school time, Mrs. Johnson was studying Thorndike, Dewey, Oppenheimer, Henderson, and I believe Froebel. She would study late at nights, and many nights had to call grandmother to come up and make Clifford Ernest go to sleep. Mrs. Johnson might be called a rebel in the education field. She rebelled at the system that was used.
Mm-hmm.
After 2 to 3 years in Mississippi, she returned to Fairhope. Mrs. Cummings gave her the use of a small cottage on her land at $25 a month, and that was the first organic school. She had 2, 3, and 4 boarding pupils that helped with the expenses. One day when they were all playing in the house, little Franklin fell and struck his head. She picked the child up and rushed to Dr. Sheldon's office. That, at that time, is about where Price Furniture Store is now. The child had passed on, but she refused to believe it. She held him until he had to be taken from her. Every morning my grandmother would fill a basket of cooked food and send me to her home. The others had to be fed. She did this until Mrs. Johnson was able to take over. Clifford Ernest, a beautiful dark-haired, dark-eyed child, was very bright and always into some kind of mischief, but minded my grandmother well. When my grandfather would nap in his chair, Clifford Ernest would slip up and untie his shoes. One day grandfather pretended to be asleep, and when Clifford Ernest started to untie the shoes, grandfather yelled and clapped his hands. There was no more shoe business after that.
I can see that child yet. He was scared to death.
My grandparents and I visited the Johnsons in their home at Barnett, Mississippi. It was a big old southern house with a dog trot through the middle, a delightful place. Although grandfather was very fond of Mrs. Johnson, he was a New Englander of Cape Cod, and he believed in the 3 R's, not in her way of teaching. There were some hot arguments when she lived with us. So I never attended her school until I returned from California, where I had lived with my mother and stepfather and went to high school. I then took teacher's training under Mrs. Johnson and taught both here and in her school in Greenwich, Connecticut. She was a wonderful woman, and we need more like her. Should we go on back to the very first time that you remember being in Fairhope?
Oh, you mean of being in Fairhope?
Yes, when you first were here.
Well, those were the early days of Fairhope where we didn't have any paved streets at all. The streets were all just hard red clay, and it would rain while they were just wagon ruts clear up to Fairhope. And they had the big water tank in the middle of the section and Fairhope Avenue.
Around 1900?
It must have been around 1900.
Mm-hmm.
And had this big tank of water, and people around the town there, when didn't have wells, why they'd go up and have this, get the water, and they had a big trough there for the horses.
Is that the only place they could get water?
That most everybody had
their
wells of their own.
Mm-hmm.
But this had this huge water tank sitting way up high.
Oh, yeah.
And a pump down below.
Mm-hmm. And what about this Sweetwater branch you mentioned one time?
Oh, Sweetwater branch was down on the bay shore, down where those condominiums are. That the second condominium down below, that big one, is practically built on Sweetwater branch, you might say. And that was a lovely stream, sweet, fresh water that flowed through there.
Yes.
And whenever people's wells went dry, they'd put barrels in their wagons and go down and fill it with water from Sweetwater branch and take it up until they could get the well fixed. Because everybody had these deep wells that you let the bucket down many, many, many feet, and you had to wind it up with a rope.
Right.
So there was a bridge across Sweetwater, and there was a little seat on this bridge and a shed over the top of it. Very romantic. And you could sit there and look at things.
Oh, yeah.
But
Must have been real peaceful.
that is gone now. You can hardly find it, I don't believe. And as near as I remember, that
No more water there either.
right there where that second condominium is, it
There's no spring
washed
there
out
anymore.
so much when the storms come, you see. It washes down where Sweetwater was all through there.
So there's no water there anymore.
No,
either.
it isn't like it was. It was a clear.
And that was when you were living here with your grandparents, the Swifts.
Yeah, when I came down from the north, my grandparents lived on the bay front in a old house that was built. It didn't have a dog trot, but it had the big wide planks for the floor and wide planks on the walls and things, and the windows had just mosquito netting in them, but they didn't have any wire netting then.
And the windows?
You know, they had windows, but we didn't have any wire netting in the windows.
Yeah,
you just put mosquito netting over the windows. You nailed them on, just like you do screens.
You had glass windows that you could shut.
Yeah, the windows were all right. And the screen doors, instead of screen doors, you had screen doors, but they had this netting on them instead of screening, because we just didn't have screening then. Now, whether they had them in the cities or not, but over here at Fairhope, we didn't. And I lived there a couple of years, and then we moved up and lived with Dr. Atkinson in her big house. While my grandfather built the large house where Kay Kendrick is now, and he built a huge house there. And he built it Cape Cod style, way up high. People told him that he couldn't build a house here that wouldn't leak. He said he could. But he had a very steep roof.
Oh, yeah.
And the rain couldn't even hit it. I think it'd slide off so fast. The only thing that hit it was a bolt of lightning hit it one time and went down and split one of the rafters.
Oh, yeah.
And it drove pieces of wood from that rafter into each rafter on either side of it just like nails. I've never seen anything like it. Just huge pieces of wood would be just driven right straight into the other rafters.
And you were here for that 1906 hurricane?
Yes, goodness. It was terrible.
You were
the water would come, in that 1906 hurricane, the water would come down the fireplace chimney and rush out onto the front, on the big room in front, and flood it. We rolled back the carpets, and the room had a door on the east and a big door on the west. And we just stood there with brooms, and as fast as they'd come down, we'd take the brooms and push it out the door on the west, out on the porch, because it was so rainy, so bad, it was so sooty and so dirty.
Yeah.
And my grandfather looked out the window, and he had a lot of chicken coops. He was a chicken fancier, and the wind had blown the tops off of the chicken coop, and his chickens were getting wet. So he wanted me to go down the side of the house and crawl around and go into the yard and put those lids back on and put a stone on them. So I went out the front door. I was all right, but the minute I hit the steps, wind practically swept me off. And then I walked around the house. I was sheltered by the house to the place where I could get in the chicken yard. Yeah. And I put the lids back and lifted a stone he had there to put on top of them. And then I had the dickens of a time getting back in. When I got to the steps and had to come back up, I had to lie just flat and just crawl to keep from being swept off of it again.
Gracious.
The wind was so strong.
Yeah, that must have been terrible.
That was something. Then you see 1906. Then there was one in 16.
You were here for that one, too.
I was married at 16, in the 16 storm.
Yeah.
But I was married in 15. And then we had another one in 26. And we haven't had a real good one, I don't believe, here. Since then, we've had smaller ones, but not a real hard one.
So when you first came here, it was around 1900, but you said you had met...
I was 1899 or 1900 when I first came.
Well, when did you get to know Mabel Webb and
You
Jeanette?
know who?
Mabel Webb Gray and Jeanette.
I knew them then because Ernest Swift, my uncle, was a friend of Effie Mershon's, and Viva and her parents was Viva lived, I think, of what's now the old Davis place.
Yes.
Up there across the gully.
Yeah.
And I knew of them then through Ernest Swift because they were all the same age. And they'd go out together in the evenings for parties, or they'd go horseback riding and things, and often he'd let me ride the horse, one of the horses, up to Effie Mershon's house, and she'd get on that. And then he and Effie would ride up to Viva's, and she'd get a horse that they had up there, and they'd all go horseback riding through the woods.
Oh, yeah.
That was the gaiety that we had in Fairhope, more or less. And then, of course, they often had parties, different places, to which I didn't go, but knew about on account of Ernest. And he'd come in the next day and tell all about it. And he went to school 1 year, and I went to school here. Of course, I guess he had his last year in school up there with me.
Yeah. So you stayed here then until about when? Till it was high school?
I think, I don't know.
You went out to
When was the San Francisco earthquake? 1906? 7?
Yeah, I believe it was around that time.
I went out to California the year after the San Francisco earthquake because I went by San Francisco, and there's still muddy ruins all through there.
Oh.
On the way to Los Angeles, and I remember going through the post office and having the big cracks in the walls that it had made.
Yeah.
It hadn't gone down. And then I went on to California and went to high school out there. My mother.
Now, her name was Williams?
Her name, she married, well, her married name was Williams.
That was your stepfather then?
Yeah, my stepfather. No, my stepfather's name was Williams. My own father's name is Williams.
Oh, what?
I was Williams. Her name was Anna Thompson Swift, and when she lived with Swift, she took their name.
Oh, I see.
And then she married Williams.
Anna Thompson Swift.
Yeah, her name was Anna Thompson, and then Swift raised her practically, and so she took their name, and she was married under the name of Anna Swift.
And your father's name was what? His
name was Hazele Williams. Hazele Martin Williams.
Oh, A-L-Z-A-R-A?
A-L-Z-E-R-A-H.
Oh.
What a name. It's a biblical name, though. They tell me it's in the Bible.
Well.
His mother was a drunkard.
And then what happened to him?
Oh, goodness. Mother and father divorced because he was a spasmodic. Is this being taped?
Oh, we can skip that part.
Yeah. He was a spasmodic drinker.
And then after she remarried,
they were divorced, and when she remarried, her name was Hartley.
So you lived with her and Mr. Hartley.
I lived with
in California.
Yeah, Clifford Hartley, and he was a lawyer, and my mother in California. And I was out there 2.5 years in high school when my mother died, and then I came back to Fairhope.
So that
and when
was
I got back by that time, I'd had 6 years of high school and hadn't graduated yet. So Aunt Nettie looked at my records and she said, "I think you've had enough high school." And she put me in teacher's training. And I had 2 years teacher's training with her.
That was what, around 19?
Well, that must have been 1913 and 14, because I was married in 15.
Okay.
And well, I guess it was 15 too, because I was married in June and I taught all that year. So it was probably 13, 14, and 15 I worked with her.
So then you married Leonard Payne in 1915.
Yeah.
And then what?
Then I went out on the farm.
Where was that?
It's about 3 miles out in the country, out near Holmberg, where the nursery is.
Oh.
We were just south of that, had 120 acres. And Edith Getty had the place that Holmberg has now, and they lived there.
Oh. You you stay here then all the time after you were married?
Yeah.
Well, then did you get to know Jeanette Dennis and them after this?
I knew
Gray?
Jeanette Dennis. When did Jeanette come here?
I'm not sure about that.
I knew her more or less through Ernest when he would talk with Viva. I heard of her and knew of her. And I remember that when she married, I went to Cushla. Who did she marry?
She married a man from Iowa, and he died in
I know.
5 years after they were married.
What was his name?
Lyman Dennis.
Lyman what?
Dennis. Lyman Dennis. And
Well,
then after he died...
Where did the Sturdivant come in?
Well, they were just neighbors. They
were
lived across
the neighbors.
street in Cushla.
That was it.
And Jeanette lived with her mother and dad, the Webbs, in Fairhope first. And Mabel Gray came down here and lived with them and taught school in 1898. And then as far as I can remember, Mabel Gray got married and moved back up north.
I didn't go to school to her.
No. But she remembered you as Hazele Williams.
Yeah.
Anyway, the Webbs moved to Cushla then for a while. They had a chicken farm. And Jeanette Dennis moved down there and lived with them after her husband died.
I remember when he died because I guess I remember through Ernest it affected him so much because Ernest and Viva, I guess, and Effie and that whole bunch were more or less knew about it, and I heard about it then, but I didn't know her too much.
And then later, Jeanette came back to Fairhope and worked with Mrs. Cross at the hotel.
Yeah.
And eventually, Mrs. Cross willed her that little house next to where the hotel was.
That's where I knew her the most, when she worked
right?
with Mrs. Cross.
And were you living on the farm then?
Yeah.
And you were just a real good friend of Mrs. Cross.
And I was good friends with Mrs. Cross, and I moved into Fairhope. By then we'd come off of the farm, and I lived over there near the mortuary, 2 doors east of the mortuary, and that's where I had a nervous breakdown. And old Dr. Van Eiderstein, a Canadian doctor at Daphne, was our doctor. And he said all I needed to do was to go on the wharf and fish. He didn't give me any medicine or anything. And after I get the children to school, I'd go down to the wharf and fish. And Crossy was down there. He was Crossy's doctor, too, and he had her down there fishing. We'd sit down there and fish, and old Otto Wendt would come down. This old German fella.
Otto who?
Otto Wendt. Wendt, I guess it would probably be in German, Wendt. But he was so dirty. But he was always fishing, and he smelt to high heaven because he carried the fish bait in his coat pocket. And some boys were there one day, and they said, well, he was going to get one bass, and they threw him overboard. Well, then they got scared, and they all jumped in and got him and pulled him out. Crossy and I like to have a fit. So...
The water probably wasn't very deep, was it?
No, it wasn't too deep, but nevertheless, he was a little short fellow. I think he'd have drowned if they hadn't.
Oh.
But they got him out all right. And boy, what a spitting, sputtering thing you ever saw in your life. But it put Crossy and I both on our feet going down there and just relaxing and fishing.
That's good. And
that's when I knew Viva. See, she'd leave Viva at the not Viva, Jeanette, take care of things, and she'd go down there and fish.
Yes, I see.
And that's where I became very good friends with both Crossy and Jeanette. Through my associations that way.
Well, let's see. What else do we want to hear about early Fairhope days?
Oh, there was the old Mershon retail store there where Bedsoes is now. And they had all kinds of groceries on one side and dry goods on the other. As I don't know who bought the dry goods, but as I remember, they must have had very good choice of dry goods because my grandmother would get nice things, carried nice buttons and things for trimming and laces and stuff to trim clothes with. And then upstairs over the back room, they had a shoe department, and in the back they carried fertilizers. That whole corner was just a retail store. And right beside it was the first post office to the west. Hitched right onto the building was just kind of a little lean-to. And that was where the first post office was.
Oh.
And then right next to that, just a little bit down, was the first millinery store. Anna B. Call
Oh, really?
and Winnie Patterson had a millinery store.
I remember the Call's little pine plot shop.
And then
Is that
after
the
she
same
went
place?
out of the millinery business, why, she turned it into a pine plot shop afterwards.
Oh, yeah.
And she made all these, Mr. Call had poor health, but he made beautiful bookends out of cypress knees. He'd go to the bay and cut them off and split them and dry them and polish them and fix them for bookends, and they were beautiful, the grains of the wood. And she fixed chinaberry beads, which was quite a task, but the chinaberry, when it's all fixed, had all the goo and stuff taken off of it, it's a very soft, plushy, soft gray. And she dyed them different colors, pastel colors, and she strung them with pearls.
Mm-hmm.
And they were beautiful, and she sold them.
Yes.
And then she made pine little baskets of pine needles, and she made pine plots candied and put in the baskets, and they sold. And then she would have quite a few oriental things. I have a couple of earrings now that I bought at that shop, the mosaic things.
Yeah.
And she'd have little odd things that would take your eye. Nothing common like you find in a gift shop nowadays. And that was, and then just the next door, next her down, was a little house where old Grandma McCall used to live, her mother. And then when she died, was the Mitchells took it over. You know this Frances Mitchell here?
Yes.
Her mother, and she, and I don't know what the kinfolks. This Mary Lee Pond, and then they had a daughter, Mildred. She's died now. And they lived in there.
Mm-hmm.
But that'd be about where Coal and Supply is, in there. House set back in the woods, just covered with
Coal
vines.
and Supply turned into the hardware store later.
Yeah, it's the hardware store now.
Right.
And that would be about where that house was. Then down below that was a house named Thompson. The people named Thompson, which were very good Sunday school people, church people.
Mm-hmm.
They lived in there, down that street. There were houses then and not stores like we have now. But they had this awful streets of red clay.
Yeah.
And once a week or twice a week, I'd have to go to the store to get the groceries. And I had a wagon, and I'd pull my wagon up there and load it full of, little red wagon, I'd load it full of groceries and haul it home. Because there was no delivery or anything else.
Mm-hmm. And clean off the red clay when you got home, huh?
Yeah. The red clay was terrible. And the Bay Hill was an awful mess when it rained.
Oh, I'll bet.
It was so much steeper than it is now, too. They kept grading it down.
Mm. And of course, that's when they had the old railroad down there. I guess.
They had the railroad. Eventually, they fixed the railroad that went down, and it went up to town. It stopped. I don't know just where it did stop.
Went up that steep hill. Huh?
It came up the hill. They fixed it up there. And seemed to me they had a trestle built up somehow. I don't remember that. It's a little bit vague.
You remember this old railroad that used to be between Fairhope and Montrose out here?
They had
Railroad
one that was
Avenue?
started. They never did finish it, I believe. It's called Barkley, I believe. Wasn't it? Up right, it was up through here.
I
Not
thought
too
they
far.
really used the one.
Not too far
out
from here.
It's called Railroad Avenue back here.
And that must be where it is, because it came right on through, and it was supposed to go out this Volanta Wharf. This was called Volanta, and they had a long wharf out there, and it was supposed to have gone in there. Now, why they chose that territory, I don't know, and it was to go through the country back to Robertsdale. Somewhere in my papers at home, I've got an old certificate of where Grandfather had put some money into the railroad, and it's an old certificate. I believe he'd given them $100 towards it, and it's among some of those papers I have at home. But that thing never materialized.
I was under the impression it had been used.
Is what?
That they had used it for some time.
I don't think it
Because
ever did.
We have found old railroad nails.
Well, now, someone told me that there
Down
was
here.
another one. I believe it was farther over, wasn't it? It wasn't right up close here?
This was going at an angle
Yeah.
from Montrose toward Fairhope.
And I don't know about that one at all. Who was it telling about that the other day? Not the other day, but sometime.
But they still have a railroad avenue here that runs along about where the old railroad used to.
And seemed to me Harry Parker was one of them that did a lot of surveying on that, because he used to be a big surveyor from here, and they were from Massachusetts. Well, we had some queer characters here. Old lady came down from somewhere, I don't know what, and built a house in the trees down south of Fairhope, and she built it too, up in the high in the trees, and had steps up to it.
Regular tree house.
Yeah, she had to run the kids off because we'd go down there. Well, it was curiosity, that's all.
Yeah.
I did have a picture of it somewhere among my pictures.
She lived by herself?
Yeah.
Kind of like a female hermit, huh?
Yeah, to a certain extent. Then there was a Mrs. Moorhead, a French woman that lived over in the south part of town that had a couple of horses, and she was a regal soul. And oh, she had a voice. And when we'd have things that entertainment and things, where she'd come up to town parades, where she'd head the parade and she'd sing the Marseillaise, and she'd sing the Star Spangled Banner. She was just a large, well-built woman, and had some of the most beautiful diamond rings. Evidently, I don't know where she came from. I don't know anything about her, but evidently she was low on her luck, I guess, because she didn't have much money, and I know when she died, she didn't have anything, and Marie Mask and Walter Mask were mortuary people at that time, and they took care of her and buried her and all for 2 diamond rings that she had. They were clusters of diamonds, beautiful things. They took those as payment. I can remember that, but that was after I was married.
Do you remember the old house that used to be on Section that they tore down recently, where they built that bank?
Section, huh?
On Section Street.
Is this being recorded?
Yeah. The old Bell House. I think they called it. Didn't somebody by the name of Frederick build that house? Or first live in it? It was across from the Steber Chevrolet place.
Oh! Bell didn't build that. People by the name of Weaver built that.
Weaver?
Mm-hmm.
I wonder where I got Frederick in there.
Weavers built that. And they lived there before Bell's had it. There was O.C. Weaver and...
Well, that was where the Webbs lived.
The who?
Webbs, my great-grandparents lived
They
there.
did?
When they first... That was one of the first places they lived. And then I think the Bells lived in it after the Webbs did.
The Bells, I don't know who the Bells bought it from. I don't know whether they bought it from the Weavers or not. I don't know whether it changed hands in between there or not. I don't remember.
You don't remember the Webbs at all.
But that was the Bell. The Bells did buy that. Renzi Bell and Irene lived there. And the Bell lived there until his wife died, didn't she? And left him with this one boy. We had the whore for the railroad track outage.
No, I didn't. Never was here then. I didn't come here till about 1945.
They had the bay boats that would come over from Mobile to bring the, that's the only transportation we had.
Right.
And old Johnny Patterson, Ford Patterson's father, had charge of the he built a big warehouse at this end of the wharf on the south side. Let's see. Yeah, and on the north side they had a big pavilion. And Mr. Bowen had the pavilion. And it built a big dance floor just out over the edge of the water.
Well, I remember that.
When you were here, didn't they?
Yes, they had.
Well, when they first built it, they didn't have the second floor on it. They just had one floor, a great big floor, and then they had a house pitched right onto it.
That's what they call the casino.
But yeah, where they lived. But later it was expanded and made much larger. But when it was smaller and they just had the one dance floor, and all of us young folks were married, Bill Daly and old Jim Gaston, my husband, a bunch of them all that age, we'd go down there to dance. There's an old nigger there that would play old Julius, play the piano. And he couldn't read a word of music, not a thing, but he sure could hit the piano. And the boys would get a new tune, and Bill Dealey would get up there with 2 or 3 others, and they'd hum that tune to him, and hum it, and he'd sit there and listen, and hum it, and he'd listen. And they say, "You got it?" He'd say, "No, give it to me again." So they'd go over it again for him, and he says, "I got it." And he'd start playing that thing off on that piano. He had a wonderful ear for music. It was just simply out of this world.
What was it?